morning, everyone. It's great to see your smiling faces. My name is Laurel Ryan. I'm the program director with 108 Contemporary, which is a nonprofit fine craft gallery that's just over the bridge in the Arts District. We love to see a familiar face, and we are always free and open to the public, but we have some really great artwork going on, and I would show you an example of our postcard if I'd brought one up with me. But we have some fantastic volunteers with us today. Deborah is back here, Lola, and Jolie. So we have some fiber artists who are, frankly, probably much more qualified to be in front of everyone than I am, but I'll be calling on, oh, thank you. So here's, while we're at it. So our current exhibition is An Unlikely Pairing, Joe Kissinger and Sarah Roble. Joe is just a master woodcrafter, just an incredible artist who's done some really funky sci-fi inspired work for us. And then Sarah is a multimedia artist who specializes in non-traditional embroidery, and they met at one of our events and started talking about collaboration. And so it's really exciting for us that not only do we have these two incredible artists working together, but it's in part because of 108 Contemporary's commitment to local and Oklahoma craft, and so we're really excited about that. That's going on today, and we'll be opening just after we finish here. All right, you came here to learn how to weave, yes? Let's get started. So you should all have a loom, some yarn of any color, and a needle, as well as your cheat sheet. So there are a couple of terms to go over first. I mean, the loom is simply the device, the frame on which we are weaving. Looms look different in every culture. I would call this a tablet or frame loom. It's very simple. You could make this out of cardboard yourself. It does have an odd number of notches here, so you're not counting wrong. It is a little odd. And then we have our wooden dowel, which we call it a shed stick. The shed is this space right here between the base of your loom and the warp. And the warp is this directional thread. You're weaving weft onto the warp. So anytime we're working with yarn, there's going to be some terms to learn. But when we talk about warp, we're going this way, weft this way. So to start, we're going to learn what's called a twining stitch. And this is simply to set the base of our yarn. It actually combines two types of stitches. And the nice thing is that the first way that you do anything is going to be a great way to continue. So I'm right-handed, so I'm going to start working right to left. But frankly, we're going to be going both ways, so it doesn't really matter. The point is that I'm going to start by going under the first string, over the next, under, and then repeating under, over, under, over. I just want to make sure I'm not going the same way twice. How much tail? Most of this is a fairly short piece of yarn, so most of it's my working yarn, and then I've only got a little bit of tail. If you prefer to tie it to your needle, you could, but it might make removal a little tricky. So I'm going over, under, or under, over, whichever way you choose, but just moving along. And the closer I am to my shed stick, the more space I have between the warp and my needle. So I'm going in a little over halfway up, and I'm just pulling until I have about my palm length of yarn, just so that I have something to hold on to. And you'll notice I've got a little arc here. I can just shove that down with my fingers. And we call that beating your weft. So I'm just pushing it down towards the bottom. It doesn't have to be tight. Straight-ish. Ish. I should say, we're not going for perfect here. If we're doing anything for the first time, we're not going for perfect. We're going for experience, and this is an experience. All right. So what we just did is actually, plain or tabby weave. It's where you're just going under, over, or over, under. That's your plain weave. To twine, which helps kind of keep our warp in place, I'm going to make kind of an X. If you were in the cross stitch workshop, you'll be in a good spot. But I'm going to, I came out under, which means I've got to go back in reverse. But to twine, I'm going to find my next over, and then I'm going to kind of come through this as an X right here like that. So I'm going under both the warp and the weft that I just did. And then I'm just going to pull that gently. Here's my hottest tip. I'm going to only pull until it barely touches here. And I could frankly wait to do this at the end. So there's even like a little bit of a gap here. And the reason I do that is because if I start really pulling, then my warp is going to start warping. Great term. It's going to start pulling in. And if you love a trapezoid shape, then go for it. Otherwise, if you want a more rectangular shape, then be gentle with the ends. So I'm going to repeat this process. This is my twining stitch of finding the next spot where my weft goes over the warp and finding that little X there and going through it. And I'm going to repeat that all the way until I'm back where I started. And this is the twining stitch. So I'm going over here, and you might notice as I do this, I am covering up those spots in my weft where during the previous pass, the pick, a line of weft is called, during the previous pass, it was left exposed. So finding those X's and going through them. I have 2 more to go. I'd say go slow because the next part of the process is pretty repetitive, thankfully. The nice thing about a lot of fiber crafting is that it is methodical. There's a lot of repetition, and so it can be incredibly meditative, I find. If you have any questions, Deborah, Jolie, and Lola are all here to help, and I will say, probably have more knowledge than I do. So the question is, on this very last one, what comes next? Next, I'm going to do my plain or tabby weaving, which is just that under, over, under, over. But because I came, my last stitch would technically be over, I'm gonna come up here and go underneath, which will then kind of wrap this last line of warp. So I sure will. I'm going to show it to you actually for the first time. So to start my second line, my second pick, I'm going to, since I'm coming over here, I'm going to go under the next time around. Just like the first one, yeah. So if you came over the last one, then you'd come underneath the next one. And then I'm going to just do that simple over, under, over, under. I'm using that twining stitch as a kind of a brace or a hem for my piece. And it can be useful if you really get into this and you start like using wool roving, which if you've seen other weavings, it's kind of that fluffy material that people often use for felting as well. If you're using that, then to line a shape with twining can be a really nice effect. All right, so I'm creating this small arc. With my second line, I just went under, over. And then I'm gonna again use my fingers to just beat it down gently until it's next to my first line. Since I came underneath here, which way am I gonna go back? Over. And now we're weaving. That's the big trick. And if you like the look of that twining, you can do it the whole way. It takes way more yarn than a plain weave or a tabby weave. That's interchangeable names for the same thing. This generic, basic under, over. But I'm gonna continue with that plain or tabby weave. Again, trying to be very, oh, I messed up. Did I? Yes, I did. Or did I? Where did it happen? Right here. Okay, so to go back, I accidentally went over two at once, which made my pattern off. So I'm just going to remove my needle and use it to, this is where I went wrong, so I'm just gonna pull, boop. It's fairly easy to just undo a line, just go right on back. But also, if you don't wanna go back, you're the boss. Again, we're going for experience instead of perfection. Because I'm pleased to inform you that once you have this, the internet is full of great ideas on how to make like little mug rugs. This is a great size to make a tiny coaster. Just a little one.
So what's the Egyptian knot?
The Egyptian knot I'll show you here in a second. First, I would like to show you how to change colors or just simply change yarn. So I'm going to get to a place where I don't think if I were to boop, boop, boop. So I have enough yarn to go over this maybe one more time. We're always going to leave a tail so that at the end we can use our needle to kind of sew them into the back. But I have enough yarn on my needle to go a full pass one more time. And then it's time for either more of the same or a color change. I'm going to do a color change just so that it's easily visible. And I'm going to find the pair of thread snips that I know I took. Found them. By the way, if you are working with yarn or thread a lot, I really like a pair of thread snips, just little boop boop. With a short enough blade, you can bring them on planes and then do your cross stitching or weaving anywhere. For those of you planning to weave a mile high. All right, when I get new, we've tried to pre-cut most of these lengths of yarn for you. When I do it myself, I like to make sure that it is a workable and manageable length of yarn. So I'm just gonna come, well, this is one arm and to the other shoulder for me. It means I have to change yarn fairly often, but it also means that my yarn is less likely to start unraveling as it gets worked. So that's why we work in somewhat short lengths for something this size. So you'll notice I just left this here. Boop. Now, you can do this one of two ways. Oh, and a side note for threading your needle. If your yarn is thick and the eye of your needle is small, I put it over my needle and then pinch, slide my needle out, and then turn it to fit over that little pinched section. That's a fun tip for handling anytime you're working with yarn and a needle. So I could, since I came out from under over here, I could start on this side. But to me, that's a lot of ends to weave in on the same side. So instead, just because I can, I'm actually going to start on the opposite side. This is a personal preference. So, since this is over, the last one over here, I'm going to start under and just do a classic tabby weave. Trying to make sure that I am alternating each pass. Pulling that weft until I have a tail, and then using my fingers to beat it down. And I'm going to do a couple more lines and then show you. Some of you have examples on your table with a diagonal line, and we're going to go over how that works. Question?
When you restarted with that second strand, does it matter if you were over, under, over?
Yes. The question was, when I started again with this second strand, does it matter whether it's over or under? I am trying to make sure that it's doing the opposite thing of the previous line, that previous pick. So since this one right here is over, that's why I went under. No problem. The question is, what is the point of the twining? Great question. Twining helps to kind of separate and stabilize, since it's wrapping all the way around the warp. It kind of helps to keep things in place. You can do it without, but since this is a kind of a 101 weaving, thought why not start the way that most weavers will start a flat project like this. Most flat weaves will start with a row of twining. And all right, what if I wanted to create a shape? Great question. Glad I asked it of myself. So let's pretend that I want to do a diagonal this way. Not pretend, I want to do a diagonal. So I'm simply going to create a gradient by pretending that this last string does not exist. So I'm going to start with my normal tabby weave. So I'm going under this is my new last string. Everything else stays the same. So this is my new last string, so I'm going to go under, given that this last one was over. And I'm going to go back the other way. I'm going to work a little fast, because I do want to get to that Egyptian knot stitch, because it's fun to experiment. So already we can see that there's an empty line. I'm going to come back the other way, and now I'm going to ignore this second line. And I'm coming under this one. That's my new last line. Oop, boop, 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 boop. And I came under, so I'm going to go over the other way. So I'm doing a full back and forth, just -1 each time. This creates a diagonal line. Too small for a coaster. We'll pretend it's for juice glasses, Keep that condensation off your nice coffee table with your tiny juice glasses. All right. This is my new last line. You can also make a lovely teeny tiny wall hanging. This is my new last line, again, and I'm just going to work until I'm out of yarn on this particular strand. And then I'll show you how to fill in that hollow spot. Although I'm about to have some questions for our other weaving experts, because I think there are a couple ways to do this, and there's the way I prefer, and then there's other personal preferences. The nice thing about a craft like this is that there are so many ways to do something. It can be you might have a little choice paralysis, but in the end, what you also have is a way to do something to engage in a craft in a way that feels comfortable to you. And the nice thing about a shape or something with odd numbers like this is that if you wanted to do a diamond shape, you could start in the center and go outward. Even shapes are nice for like checkerboard patterns or stripes. So this is done a very gentle angle here. And you can start to see what I mean as you work your thread or your yarn more, it starts to unravel a little bit. It's much less tightly wound than it was down here. So I'm going to finish off this last one. Oh, yes, the color is variegated yarn. It can be very fun to work with if you don't want to mess around with changing colors at all. And the last one, I'm just coming around like so. All right, this is where we might get into some differences of opinion. So if I wanted to come back in with that pink color, I personally like to work in longer lengths. So what I would do, and I have to emphasize personal preference, is flip my loom over and start working this way. That's personal preference. What that does, however, is make it a little loosey-goosey as far as I don't have that twining stitch to support the rest of my shape. So you could always just come back in from the bottom, and I'd go around this one time, just a little wrap around, and then that's the line that goes with this, then under over, and start working back that way. That's probably the more stable version. Deborah, Jolie, is that how, when you're creating diagonals, do you tend to work from the same direction?
I tend to do. Is that like
The tension is the same? Yeah. So that's probably the better, this is the better version than the thing that I prefer to do. But again, that's why we ask actual experts. So now I'm just working back the opposite direction that I came, and I'm using each of these as my marker for where my pick, my line of weft ends. So she's doing a tabby or plain weave. Ooh, did I skip one? Ooh, I didn't do that long enough. Going back. This one. And continuing. All right. So I'm going to finish out this line of, or this length of yarn, and then I'll show you how to do the Egyptian knot, which is just another way of adding some texture. Just trying to make sure that it's not pulled. right, and if I were to continue, I'd go up in the same, I'd add some more pink because I've got one more line here. But let's put this aside so I can show you Egyptian knots. So here's an example. An Egyptian knot is simply going around your weft instead of under over. Now here is my warning. It's nice to have a line of plain weave in between, because I tried just doing Egyptian knot the whole way up, and it was real squirrely to get off my loom. So that's my word of warning. Here's an example that I was working on in stripes. The fun thing about getting ready to do this is that I get to play with yarn a whole bunch at my desk. It's very fun for me. All right, so where I was in the pattern, I would have done a line of plain, so I'm going to do a line of plain weave. Boop, 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 boop. And then I'll show you Egyptian knots. As you get closer to, if your fingers don't seem to be doing the job, you can use your shed stick as a beater just to kind of boop, 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 shove things down. That can be helpful. All right, Egyptian knot. Now hide these so that they're less distracting. To do Egyptian knot, first I'm going to thread my yarn the way that I showed you earlier. Thread my needle. And I'm going to come up from one side all the way, whoop, and then around. I sure did. Let me do this a better way. Okay, I'm going to start over just for fun. So what we're doing is wrapping our yarn around each warp thread. So just to cover the warp thread, I'm going to come over the first one and under the next one. And I'm being gentle. And then, instead of continuing, I'm going to come back, and I've got to cover this warp. So I'm going to come underneath it. And then to start my next one, I'm going to come under 2. So I went over 1 to start, and then I'm coming under 2. And then I'm going to, that's my first Egyptian knot right there. Sure. And then I'm going to come back, because I have to cover this next one, and I'm going to come under 2. And that's going to cover the previous one. Or if you want the less kind of shortcutty way to do it, takes a little longer, but you could just say to yourself, okay, I'm going to wrap this one string. Great, I got to wrap this next one. And I'm going to come, if I went under one way, that was just because I've technically already wrapped it by coming over it. I'm trying to cover each warp thread. So when we do that plain or tabby weave, we leave a line every other one. If you're starting with a new color, I'd start over the first one. Yeah, so let me back up, and I'm just going to snip this. Sure. All right. So in the pattern that I started here, I've got white, pink, blue. I did my line of white. So for my pink, I'm going to start over and then under, leaving that tail. And then I'm gonna come back one and go under, two.
We can come back.
Rather than progressing,
Yeah.
I'm gonna come back to where,
You did under.
yeah, this first, to where I did under, to this first space.
You're gonna go under again.
And I'm going under again, so that it'll cover, or it'll come off my needle. You're embarrassing me in front of my friends, act right.
Yes.
And then going under two. So that means these first two warp threads are covered by weft. This one is exposed. Disgusting. So I have to go back and cover it by coming under two. This one is exposed. Heinous. Come back. Go under two. So this is going to take more yarn than plain or tabby. But it's just, it's a textural option. Little waves. And you can kind of beat it down as you go. So I'm coming, every time I go under one, I come back and go under it again. If you're doing a figure eight, I'll bet that's another type of stitch. I could almost guarantee you that's just another way of weaving. It's got a name, and I might not know it. I'll bet Deborah would, but weaving is simply a way of creating a textile or a fabric by interlocking your two fibers, or fibers in two directions. Sometimes it's more than two. So that's my line of Egyptian knots going the one way. And according to my pattern that I set up here, I'm going to come back the other way with blue, so I'll show you that here. I'm going to start the exact same way by going over the first one, under the next one. Over the first, just to cover, because we just got to get that thing covered. It's naked. So we've left one exposed. I'm going to come back and go under two. Under, come back, go under two. And continue the other way. Here's my hot tip for Egyptian knot. If it's making this workshop less fun, throw it in the trash. Don't do it.
No, it's making me determined.
No, now you've got a vendetta against Egyptian knots, and you got to do it.
No, I just, like, I want to master it, that's all.
And mastery is for another day. Today we are doing experience. Experience. You're having experience with Egyptian knot?
No. No experience with Egyptian. It is beating me up.
So you said you started the same way, so you start.
I go over one, under the next one, and then making that kind of looping.
Okay, I think I'm gonna stop trying and just watch you for a bit.
Yeah, that's helpful, that's what I did at first.
So every time I go under,
I feel like one of my students now.
I have to go back a space, and come under again. So my needle almost exclusively goes under my warp when I'm doing Egyptian knot. Under. Under. And under. But doing a whole bunch of that in a row leads to some wonkiness in my experience. You see what this is doing right here? Wonky. So I'm going to come back and do some plain weave on top in this pattern. And I am a little lazy when it comes to weaving in ends, so I'm going to come through this little knot that I made so that I can just continue upwards instead of having to cut every time.
I do that too, yeah.
You know, why not? Why not?
I don't like the cut.
I'm just like, ugh. Ugh. It's too much. Too much for me. This should have been under. So I'm going to add another line of plain weave. I'm going to add 2. Okay. And then I'll show you how I like to finish. Which is more twining.
Thank you so much, Laurel. This is such like a meditative sort of thing, isn't it? So we are at 11:42, so we just have like 3 minutes left. But the good news is that you can take this home with you.
You sure can.
And you can continue to work on it at home. So, yeah. Pardon?
How much of the yarn? As much as you think you'll need. And thank you to those people, and specifically to one Hannah Tranberg. She's not here, but she donated the majority of the yarn that we are using today. All right, let's pretend I've had enough. I'm ready to end it. So I have my line of plain weave right here. I'm going to add that twining stitch where I find those X's the same way that I did here, except I'm going upward instead of coming downwards. Or if it's helpful, flip it around. Woo-hoo-hoo-hoo-hoo. Let's just flip it. So I'm finding, this is the line of plain weave, this last pick that I'll be working into. So I'm going to find where I went over and go through that X. Gently pulling until that loop is right next to that last warp. And I'm going to repeat every other warp, finding that X and going down and through.
I got messed up trying to do this. I'm gonna call it 2.
Coming down and through. Down and through. All right. And how do I get this thing off of this loom? Fantastic question. Glad I asked. First step, pull out your shed stick, and then I'm gonna flip it over. And this loom is just, we've wrapped the whole thing around. So I'm going to come through and snip across the center. So before I weave in my, be quiet, Sky. We're working here. So I'm gonna, to get this, I'm working from the outside in, and I'm pulling up 2 warp threads, and then I'm just going to tie them together in a simple overhand knot, coming around and through. And then, little baby rug. And then I'm gonna use my needle to keep the knot where I want it. And then I'm gonna work the other way. Now, with an odd number of warp threads, you're gonna end up tying 3 together in some spots. Whatever. If you would like to leave your strings longer and then use like a mascara wand to brush them out and fluff them up a little bit, you can do that too. But essentially, once you have all of your strings cut, you can cut them to the length that you like, and then we got to do some more pretending. We're going to pretend, again, just for time's sake, that I've tied them all together brilliantly. It looks beautiful. We're all in awe. Yes. Wow. Put it in the Gilgrace. And we're also going to pretend that it's fully removed instead of still attached to one end. Okay. So here's the back. And I know it's the back because I've done Egyptian knots on the front. If you do something that's entirely plain weave, then it's going to look the same front and back. Any of these spare ends, I'm just going to find a spot in the back where I can make a bit of a zigzag and go in one way, back the other way, and then snip that. Hidden. Ooh. So when you get to this point, inevitably, in your beautiful projects that you're creating right now, make sure that you hang on to your needle, and it also does not have to stay flat while you're doing this process. So if you're finding, oh, this is a really short end, you can bunch it up. Nobody's in charge except for you. Just scrunch it together. You also, the nice thing here is you don't have to worry about splitting your yarn. It actually makes things a little bit more secure. To pull that through, boop, boop, boop. Another one, hidden. And then you're gonna have cleaner edges on the front. All right, this has been I Can't Weave with 108 Contemporary. Please come check us out. We'd love to see you down at the gallery sometime. And thank you to Lola, Jolie, Deborah for being our incredible volunteers today.